Senator from Kentucky.
Currently, Congress has about a 10% approval rate. One of the reasons is we don't even obey our own rules. For goodness sakes, 600-page bill, and I got it this morning. Not one member of the Senate will read this bill before we vote on it. We're going to vote on this in the next 30 minutes. I and Senator Lee and others will object to this. We'll have a point of order that our own rules say that it has to be posted online for 48 hours. 600 pages. No one will read it. No wonder our approval rating is 10%. Nobody knows what we're voting on. In fact, things have been stuck in this bill last night that have nothing to do with any of these bills, and they've been stuck in, and we're just now discovering it. I passed two senators in the hall going back to their office, still trying to get out something that's been written into this bill that affects their state that they found out minutes ago. Had they not found out about it, nobody would have known about it. Three bills that are in question here: transportation bill, student loan bill. The student loan bill, originally we had the loans at 6%, and it was somehow bringing in money to the Treasury. We were using that money to pay for Obamacare. Now it's at 3%, that money's gone. Where's the money to pay for Obamacare? We have a shell game up here. We say one thing's going to pay for it, now this is going to pay for it. Money disappears. Now what they're saying is they're going to pay for this by taking money out of pensions. Raise your hand if you think it's a good idea to underfund pensions more. Over half of the pensions in this country are technically insolvent because they don't have enough money to pay for them. Is it a good idea to have less money go into workers' pension to pay for a student loan program? I have a bill in Congress that says we should read the bills before we pass them. It says that we should wait 1 day for each 20 pages. So we'd be given time to read 600-page bills. But at the very least, we ought to adhere to our own rules. Our rules say that it should be posted online at least 48 hours. 48 hours is still a challenge to find out everything in here. You know how long the Federal Register is? It's 55,000 pages added annually. It's hundreds of thousands of pages. So when you read this, you have to refer to the Federal Register that's hundreds of thousands of pages to find out what they've stuck in this bill in the dead of night. This isn't the way we should operate. The American people want to know, why do we all of a sudden say, oh, the government's going to shut down if we don't do something in 3 days? Well, what were they doing for the previous 3 months? What's going on up here? The other side hasn't produced a budget in 3 years. That's against the rules. The rules of the Senate say you must produce a budget, and they didn't do it for 3 years. When we presented them with their own budget that we wrote for them, nobody voted for it. Zero on the other side of the aisle voted for their own president's budget. How are we going to get to compromise if they're not showing up for work? How are we going to get anything done if they don't obey their own rules? I'm discouraged by this. I will raise a point of order in the next hour that says we have broken the rules of the Senate, and I will ask them to vote on it. I fully expect the parliamentarian will rule in our favor. We'll see. But then the other side will simply close their eyes to the rules. They won't care what the parliamentarian says, and they will just overturn this by saying, we are the majority and we deem it so. We are the majority. We don't care what's in the bills. We don't care to take the time to read the bills. We are in the majority and we deem it so. I think this is why the American people are unhappy with what's going on in this body. I object strenuously to it. I will vote against this, and I will raise a point of order that says we should read the bills before we pass them. Thank you, Mr. President.
You don't think that there is a moral issue in getting people health care when they cannot afford it in the open market?
Sure there is. Sure there is. Yeah, but you've got your heart, and you have to also use your brain. How do you distribute this good to the most people and get them the most benefit? And my argument would be that government is inherently inept at doing most things because government doesn't get the proper signals. What I would say is that the marketplace works very well. Capitalism has not been tried yet in healthcare. Most of healthcare is government fixed prices, and there's very little capitalism. In fact, I'm a physician. In my practice, about 3% of my practice was capitalism. Those are the people who came in with high deductibles or paid cash. That marketplace worked because we did bid down prices on things that people came in and paid for.
I was wondering if Senator Paul took Medicare, Medicaid payments when he was a doctor. If he took government payments.
Yeah, you can't be a physician in our country without participating with the government. That's the system we live under.
To begin to filibuster John Brennan's nomination for the CIA. I will speak until I can no longer speak. I will speak as long as it takes until the alarm is sounded from coast to coast that our Constitution is important, that your rights to trial by jury are precious, that no American should be killed by a drone on American soil without first being charged with a crime, without first being found to be guilty by a court. November 30th, it was 100,000 marks. October 15th, it was a couple of million marks for a loaf of bread. It was a chaotic situation. Out of that chaos, Hitler was elected democratically. They elected him out of this chaos. The point isn't that anybody in our country is Hitler. I'm not accusing anybody of being that evil. I think it's an overplayed and a misused analogy. But what I am saying is that in a democracy, you could someday elect someone who is very evil. That's why we don't give the power to the government. And it's not an accusation of this president or anybody in this body. It's a point to be made historically that occasionally even a democracy gets it wrong. So when a democracy gets it wrong, you want the law to be there in place. You want this rule of law. As I mentioned, Hayek said that this is what distinguishes us. Nothing distinguishes us more clearly from arbitrary government and a government of whims and a rule of law, and a stable and consistent government as the rule of law. President.
The senator from Kentucky.
I rise today to begin to filibuster John Brennan's nomination for the CIA. I will speak until I can no longer speak. I will speak as long as it takes until the alarm is sounded from coast to coast that our Constitution is important, that your rights to trial by jury are precious, that no American should be killed by a drone on American soil without first being charged with a crime, without first being found to be guilty by a court, that Americans could be killed in a cafe in San Francisco or in a restaurant in Houston or at their home in Bowling Green, Kentucky, is an abomination. It is something that should not and cannot be tolerated in our country. I don't rise to oppose John Brennan's nomination simply for the person. I rise today for the principle. The principle is one that as Americans we have fought long and hard for, and to give up on that principle, to give up on the Bill of Rights, to give up on the Fifth Amendment protection that says that no person shall be held without due process, that no person shall be held for a capital offense without being indicted. This is a precious American tradition and something we should not give up on easily. They say Lewis Carroll is fiction. Alice never fell down a rabbit hole, and the White Queen's caustic judgments are not really a threat to your security. Or has America the Beautiful become Alice's Wonderland? No, no, said the Queen. Sentence first, verdict afterwards. Stuff and nonsense, Alice said loudly. The idea of having the sentence first? Hold your tongue, said the Queen, turning purple. I won't, said Alice. Release the drones, said the Queen, as she shouted at the top of her voice. Lewis Carroll is fiction, right? When I asked the President, can you kill an American on American soil, it should have been an easy answer. It's an easy question. It should have been a resounding and unequivocal no. The President's response, he hasn't killed anyone yet. We're supposed to be comforted by that. The President says, I haven't killed anyone yet. He goes on to say, and I have no intention of killing Americans. but I might. Is that enough? Are we satisfied by that? Are we so complacent with our rights that we would allow a president to say he might kill Americans, but he will judge the circumstances? He will be the sole arbiter. He will be the sole decider. He will be the executioner in chief if he sees fit.